Welcome to this edition of Great Books, a lively discussion of a selection from the canon of exceptional literature. Here's your host, Jack Hatfield.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us for the Great Books Show. I'm Jack Hatfield. Our panel meets monthly to discuss great works of classic and modern literature. Today we're discussing Faust, Part 1 by Goethe. Maureen will introduce the work. Maureen?
Johann Wolfgang von Goethe was born in Frankfurt, Germany, to a wealthy family in 1749. Although he held major posts in government and dabbled in science, he is best remembered for his writing. He was a member of the Sturm und Drang literary movement, which opposed rationalism and instead concentrated on emotional turbulence and human individuality. His masterpiece, the play Faust, which he worked on for 60 years, was loosely based on a German folk tale, which Christopher Marlowe had turned into an English play in 1604. Contrary to the Bible story, where Satan tries to win Job's soul by persecuting him, here the devil tries to lure Faust's soul from God by enticing him with illicit worldly pleasures. The Faustian bargain is that if the devil, Mephistopheles, manages to bring but a single moment of satisfaction to the life of the disillusioned scholar, Faust would gladly die and serve the devil forever. As the play progresses, Faust falls in love with an innocent girl and uses a witch's brew to help seduce her. Gretchen yields to him, which leads to the death of her mother with a sleeping potion, the death of her brother Valentine in a duel with Faust, and a sentence of death for herself for her deliberate drowning of the child she bears. Faust flees a witch's orgy to beg Gretchen to escape from prison with him, but she refuses. Upon asking for God's mercy at the moment of her execution, her soul is saved. Thus end Part 1 of the play, leaving the fate of Faust's soul to Part 2.
My first question is, what drove Faust to make his pact with the devil?
Well, if we would reference on page 179, there's a section in there where Faust says, "We yearn for revelation that nowhere flames with more dignity, more beauty than here in the Gospels." And it's evidenced in the text that Faust has a soul and that he lacks faith. And so he's seeking to find something beyond his earthly existence. He's definitely a scholar. There's no question about that. And also comments on the next page, it is the thought that moves and creates everything. So Faust's comments and his dealing with the devil have as much to do with understanding as it is striving to achieve something. And I think that premise permeates the entire section here, that it is through action as well as thoughts that a person finds himself.
When it opens with Faust, Faust is very upset because he said, "I've spent my whole life studying, and what do I know? Nothing I know is worth knowing. I really don't know what drives the world." And he was very discontent and disillusioned, and even went so far as contemplating suicide.
Correct.
And when the devil came, he was already willing to die.
Yes.
Well, he's frustrated because he has all this knowledge and it's not helping him live his life.
Right.
So he goes to magic and he says, well, knowledge doesn't work. Let me try magic. Magic doesn't work. So I think the devil comes along and says, hey, I'm going to give this a shot. This might satisfy me.
Right.
Okay? So I think it was frustration that really led him to make the deal with the devil.
And alienation. And I think he's very alienated from life.
Yes.
And he says, and he lost all faith in words and concepts. I mean, books. And he had one phrase I liked. He said he was like looking at reality the wrong way through a telescope, where it was this distant sort of thing and it didn't mean much anymore.
Yeah.
It's like he studied the map and never got down to what the map represents, and that didn't satisfy him.
Well, he was looking for that moment of satisfaction. That's the deal he made with the devil. I want to be satisfied.
Yeah.
And if I'm satisfied for one moment, and would you agree that that satisfaction is about happiness? It's in other words, to be happy for 1 minute.
He says no.
No?
In the text, he says no.
No.
I think it's deeper than mere happiness, because you figure he would have been happy for at least a moment with Gretchen, but he wanted a deep satisfaction and contentment and knowledge. I think he had a very big ego. You know, when he decided to dabble in magic, he called down the spirits, and a spirit answered him. And he told the spirit he was equal.
Well, equal.
Right.
Right? And many times
Yeah.
he talks about being godlike.
Right.
And so he had this big ego. He was going to know everything, and he couldn't, and it was frustrating.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think his ego is really an important part of the story of Faust.
I think destroying the ego of his ego was the important part of the
Yes.
story.
You know,
You're right.
yes.
Yeah,
Jack,
yeah.
your question leads to another question. What was he looking for? I mean, he makes a deal, right?
Well, he makes a comment here just to your statement on happiness. He said, "You heard me." He's having a conversation with Mephistopheles, and he says, "You heard me. Happiness is not the question. It is to the most excruciating ecstasy, enamored hatred, stirring discontent, to frenzy that I vow myself." So it is not. He's looking to transcend normal happiness.
He wants emotion. He
Yes,
wants
that's the lack
he
of
wants
his
to-
character.
yeah.
He's lacking emotion
Yeah.
because he's a scholar. He's
Yeah.
been in the books too long.
But still, he has some moments when he's happy, like when he's out in nature,
Yes.
right? And he feels good, and he feels...
On the walk.
He would feel
Yeah.
happy and content, but not completely satisfied, you know? And then something keeps drawing him back because it's not enough for him. It's never enough. And you could say that's part of the human condition, that nothing is never enough for us. We keep striving for something more. You know, what Einstein say, to know the mind of God, you know, that's what I think he was reaching for. He wanted to know what made everything tick. And we can't know that.
Somebody brought up the real pact with the devil. It wasn't quite like whoever said it was. I mean, I think that it means that, but can anyone paraphrase exactly what he said? I'm not sure where it is.
It was a bet, right? It wasn't a pact that I'll give you my soul. It was a bet that the devil, if you can give me satisfaction.
No, I don't
I'll
think he
do it.
said that.
I think he did.
He said, the whole throughout this was standing still. And he says, well, let's just see if we can find it here. Because I think this is very, very important.
He says on page 196, "What am I then, if not possible, to reach that crown of all mankind, that goal towards which all my senses strive?" Again, I don't think there's a clear statement of what he's looking for, because happiness, on a previous page, he says, "Happy the man who bears within his breast pure faith and pure trust." Yet earlier, he denies faith.
Okay, that's a
on
different.
193.
Yeah, that's what I got.
He makes the
183?
pact.
193, right.
If ever I stretch myself upon a bed of ease, my heart at peace, then let that be the end of me. If ever you can fool me with your flattery till I am satisfied with what I am, if ever you can swindle me with pleasure, may that day be my last. I make you that bet.
That's the
And
contract.
Mephistopheles says, done.
That's the
Well,
contract.
he goes on to
Okay.
say, Faust says, as soon as I stand still, I'm a slave. So that whole thing about standing still, I think is also brought out there.
So he doesn't want to stand still? I think
No, he doesn't. That if he stands still, he loses a bet.
He's always striving. Is that
Right,
Yes, and it
Right.
goes
That's what
back,
drives him, yeah.
goes back
Right.
to
Drives
the
him.
to the first when God and Mephistopheles are talking, and God says, one thing about humans is cool, is they're always striving, and he says that's one of the important aspects of being human.
But he also said that there was a reason for the devil.
Yeah.
Because man's enterprise is easily exhausted, before long he does absolutely nothing. So I am glad to give him a companion who prods and lures and must, as a devil, do. Right? I thought when Faust was not doing things, when he was contemplating nature, I think he was happiest in the play. But that the devil always wanted him to do stuff. You know, to have fun, to get drunk, to find a woman. You know, I'm going to take you into the city where it's interesting. You know, I think the devil was against reason. And the devil
Yeah.
was trying to get him not to think and to be in a whirlwind of activity.
of pleasure?
The Lord,
A whirlwind of activity and pleasure.
Pleasure.
the Lord says a man must make mistakes
Yes.
as
Right.
long as he keeps trying.
Right.
Yes.
And then Mephistopheles, attacks that, and then the Lord comes in. A good man struggling in his darkness still knows the true way.
He was saying, God was saying that, you know, I don't think you'll be able to entice him because
Right, that's the
the
essence of
struggling
the
man's
bet,
going to
that
find
he's-
the way,
Yes.
right? And even Faust thinks that he's going to outwit the devil, that he's never going to have that moment of satisfaction because he thinks himself equal to the gods, to the spirits,
And
to
he
the
says
devil.
that here, but he says in here that he thinks himself a god.
You know what I enjoy? When the devil says, you know, I like talking to God. He's a good old
Yeah, right.
He's a good old boy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
It's pleasurable to talk to him every once in a while. I got a kick out of that.
On page 176, I think one of the key parts in here is he's saying, Faust says, 2 souls dwell in my breast.
Yes.
I think that's very important. What do you think he means by that?
Two
Well,
souls.
He says a
what?
little further down, the one in gross and passionate desire. clutches the world.
176?
Yeah.
Yes, 176.
Yeah.
One in gross and passionate desire clutches at the world with greedy limbs. The other soars imperious from the dust into the realms of the first lofty fathers. So, I mean, he admits throughout the document that he has a spirit. And I guess one of the questions I would ask, is the spirit the same as the soul? Or is it something separate?
Well, does he say you spirits for him are something all different? He has a spiritual yearning that's different from the soul, I think. And he's torn between, because he says 2 souls.
Correct.
And, so he's and on one hand, he wants these earthly desires, and he wants to taste earth and women and song and, drugs, rock and roll, and on the other hand, he's got this spiritual yearning, and it's kind of tearing him apart.
It's the flesh
Yeah,
and the
right,
spirit.
exactly.
We're always
Right,
torn
that's
as
it.
humans.
That's
And it's the desire within him for that spirit, that, for the heavenly, that he can't reach, that really messes him up. Because he's eventually going to get all the pleasures of the flesh that he can, because that's what the devil is going to offer him, but he can't reach that spiritual satisfaction that he wants, that he yearns for, that's inside all men.
I think the author is telling us about the human condition.
Yes.
That
Yes.
struggle.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay?
Absolutely.
That's the message.
And he's not against the flesh. I mean, he's not
No.
against
No.
it
No,
at
no.
all.
No,
So,
he's talking
yeah.
about the conflict.
Yeah.
It would just seem he has no experience with the flesh. He's been tied up in books too long.
No, but when he was out on the town during the Easter celebration,
Right, yes.
and he was enjoying the people being around, and it was his friend Wagner who said, I can't stand this, all this bustling, this is terrible, but Faust actually was enjoying it.
Let's jump ahead a little bit. The devil brings him to Gretchen, who was his one true love. And then at the end, Gretchen gets in a lot of trouble, and she dies.
The devil made me do it, right?
The devil made me do it.
What was her role in that? I mean, did she have a fatal flaw? What?
I think you have to have a juxtaposition between the purity and evil, good and evil. That's what these two are. She represents good at a very high level.
Does she? That's my question.
Well, initially, until she was tempted. And
Right.
then this is where you fall into the biblical trap of Eve caused all the problems. So she ends up being Eve in this document, as I see it.
But she only causes trouble for herself, I think, and for her mother and
Well, her family,
brother
yes.
and
Well,
and her
they
baby.
both get knocked off.
Yeah, so
But there's a scene when he's out in nature before he has seduced her, right? And he's kind of happy and he's loving her from afar. And it's like the devil says, hey, come on. There's a girl that's pining for you. Go, take her,
Yeah.
And he finally said, yeah, essentially like the devil's making me do it.
wait,
you
didn't
know?
he give him a drug?
Well, no, he goes back to being young, doesn't he?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
got
the
a
drug,
drug,
yeah.
a witch's
Right,
brew
yeah,
to be
witch's brew.
young.
Yeah.
And then also with Gretchen, there were jewels that
Yes.
the devil gave her, and I was wondering if
Twice.
the jewels might have been enchanted or something.
Well, her
Or
mother
just
found them
jewels
first
can
and gave them to the
enchant
church.
anybody.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
her mother
first
gave them to
batch.
right.
And
Second batch.
then they got a second batch,
Right.
which she decided to keep from her mother.
And I think that was the first, her fall from virtue, even
Right.
how
Yes,
small it was.
absolutely.
Took 2 apples to get her to fall.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it
Only
took
because
a
her
lot.
mother took the first one away from
Yeah.
her.
Right.
Because even as her mother was doing that and giving them to the church, she was going, well, Faust wasn't a bad man. I think he was a good man. And meanwhile, her mother's saying, we're going to give this away because we don't want it, because it's only going to lead to corruption.
Well, whose fault was it that she ended up dying and tortured and mad? Can you say someone's fault it was? Was it Faust? Was it the devil? Was it her?
Well, Faust seduced her, and the devil came to her once and said, it's about time for you to get married. And she goes, no, I'm much too young. And he goes, well, then you should get a sweetheart. And she goes, no, that's not the
Right.
custom. And the devil says, well, even if it's not the custom, everybody's doing it. Right. And that was like a temptation where the devil put that in her mind that that's maybe what she should be doing because everybody's doing it. And
Was it she? Didn't she have a magic potion that made her love him? Or I'm trying to remember the.
No, the potion she gave to her mother,
Yeah, I knew that.
sleeping
That killed her.
the
potion.
sleeping potion. And I'm just wondering if Gretchen isn't the foil by Mephistopheles to tempt Faust to commit to something. And she's got to be that thing that he's going to fall in love with and say that I'm completely happy, and then he's got his soul. But it didn't work that way.
No.
It didn't work out that way.
Why do you think? I couldn't find anything in the text where it starts off Faust is madly in love with Gretchen, and then
No, it's not in there. No, and it's,
no. Let me complete it here. I mean, he is madly in
yes.
love
He
with her,
is.
and then he leaves her for a time.
Right.
for
a long
essentially
time.
9 months.
Yeah,
Right,
and she's
yeah.
pregnant.
Right. Yeah.
So what is
what-
he doing there
yeah.
those 9 months if he really
Right.
loved her?
Yeah.
Because at one point he says, it was lust that brought me here, but now it's love. Well, then after he seduces her and he goes away, well then obviously it wasn't really love because after he had her, he left.
Yeah, I wish it would. Gerda would tell us more about why he left her. I
About
don't.
what
I
happened.
don't
Well, even
quite
the
understand.
seduction was rather circumspect. You don't get a whole lot of information.
Yeah,
about
right.
that,
Yeah.
so-
Yeah,
All
right.
we know is that she gave her mother a sleeping potion so
Right.
her mother
So they
wouldn't-
can make love.
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
so her mother wouldn't wake up, and it killed her.
And that's part of what her downfall, even though it wasn't
Yes.
fault of her own. So, did she
That's a
deserve? Did
sin.
she deserve her end? Maybe the same question I was asking before, a different way.
Did she deserve her end?
Yeah.
Well, her very end is that she was saved. So
Yes.
did she deserve to be saved? Well, she called upon God at her
Right,
last
yes.
moment, and therefore was saved
for
because she
forgiveness,
called
yeah.
on God
So in
for
that
his
case,
mercy.
the devil didn't win in the end.
Right.
The devil didn't win. Okay, did she deserve to be killed? She drowned her child, but by that point, when we see her in the prison,
yes.
she's really hallucinating.
Yeah, she's
and
mad.
she's saying, I got to feed my baby, and then she realizes that the baby's dead,
Dead.
and she goes, oh, I see my mother over there, and oh, the baby's in the water, go save my baby. It's still moving.
And she didn't recognize Faust
So
when he walks in.
Well, that's because the spell wore off and he was old. It's only when he
Oh.
started talking
Okay, all
that
right.
Okay.
She recognized the voice.
that she recognized his voice and said, oh, that's the voice of the one I love. Okay, but she was so overcome with guilt and grief. I mean, maybe not only for giving in to him, but then killing her mother.
And the child.
Yes, and then her child 9 months later, and her brother, who tried to defend her honor,
He gets killed.
He gets killed.
he gets killed. So she has a lot
And
to
I
go
th-
crazy over.
I think it was Faust's fault myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mephistopheles comments
Definitely.
near the end here, there's no joy without sorrow, and sorrow without joy. And so if you look at life as pairs of opposites, you can't define the one without the other. And so therefore, that's why this story, I think, has meaning, because we're comparing two ends of a spectrum. And the devil is always there in some way, shape, or form,
What are the two ends?
good and evil.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, Mephistopheles is also talking about darkness and light. In the
Right,
beginning, there was
right.
darkness, and then there was light. And one of the things that he said upset him about the world and about people was that he said, the light keeps being attracted to these people, and it blocks the light, and it makes the people look beautiful. And that's why I want to destroy the people, and that's why I want to destroy light, because he's upset.
Well, go ahead.
And the whole thing is that he doesn't like humans, and he wants to destroy them, and he doesn't like reason in humans because reason is godlike, and he wants to destroy that too, and that's his role in life.
Early in the story, when we talked about it, Faust says, he's two parts to his soul, and one of them is spiritual, and one of them is the flesh. How did it resolve itself in the story with Faust?
I think
Did
that's-
one win?
I think that's going to be part 2.
Well, I don't. So did it in the story?
I know.
In this story,
I think the conflict still existed.
Yes.
It's the human condition, so I don't know why it would go away. One would win over the other.
But in the story,
it's not going to be resolved until you die, because life is a continual struggle. And maybe it got resolved for Gretchen, who dies at the end, but I don't think it's resolved for Faust. I think he sees what he did that was bad, and he calls himself hated by God somewhere in here because of what he did to Gretchen, even before Gretchen was killed.
Yeah, he states in the end, I wish I had never been born. A little bit further on down, Gretchen says, I give myself up to the judgment of God. And so that is a segue, I think, into Act 2, which we're not going to get into, but just the same, it's an ongoing discussion here of all the foibles that we exist in life that we individually have to deal with. And these are shown at a much higher level between good and evil.
we're getting kind of to the end. What did you get out of this whole thing? I certainly, just one of my favorite pieces myself.
I like one of the things we didn't bring up was how the devil says that you can use words to say anything.
Orators.
Yeah,
Yes.
and he was trying to lure Faust with pleasures, and he was also trying to keep him from thinking by continually shouting words at him and not giving him any time to think. And it seemed like he was happiest when he wasn't being very active, and he wasn't speaking. He was just communing with nature.
Faust says here in one of his little segues on page 180, it's not the word, it is written in the beginning was the thought.
The thought,
Hey.
yeah, right.
So the thought had to precede the word.
But then he goes on to say it's the deed.
Yes, the
It-
deed.
it
Exactly,
precedes them
right.
all, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that means, but
I think it means doing, don't you think?
yeah.
Yeah, in the beginning was the power,
Yeah.
even before that. So
No, the most powerful one is the deed. He says there's a progression there. But anyway, what did you get out of the whole thing?
Well, I think it's the human nature again.
exactly.
The conflict between the spirit and the physical. And he does a good job in setting up all these events to make that point.
And you're never going to get everything you want.
No? Yeah.
According to my reading of the story, you don't get anything you want.
He's still working on that.
Yeah.
He didn't
Yeah.
get it
Be
yet.
careful what you want.
Yeah, you know, at the last minute, as Gretchen is mad and dying,
Yeah.
the devil says, you know, you're going to hell, and God says, nope, you're going to heaven. Well, I'd rather have a little bit more happiness in life as opposed to dying to get happiness. So I thought it was a very downer because it wasn't. Nobody came out of it unsullied.
Right.
And Gretchen certainly didn't do a lot wrong. She just had little tiny things. But she was, I think, a victim of what was going on. So what did you get out of the whole thing?
If you go back to Greek reading and Greek philosophy, this is the fates that are determining what it is you're doing. You really don't have a lot of control over your own life as much as you think you do, but it's the fates that determine who you are and where you're going to go. So.
Yeah. The curse of the house of Atreus.
Right.
Yeah. So anything else about this? It's such a rich story.
I also love the yearning for the spiritual. It was always there within him. And even though there was a big discussion about religion and what place it has, you know, he keeps saying that there's something that people, whatever you call it, there's something out there. And whether you call it joy or you call it God, there's something. And I like that. And even when he was being bad, he could feel some goodness within himself sometimes.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. Join us next time as we discuss another great selection. As Aristotle said, the best way to learn is to get together in small groups and discuss great ideas.